this is a list of how we can get the categories from a project, and we are starting to use this project, which is the one of the sample that you can find in Revit. And Jose, you have to close your microphone. Sorry, let me close the microphone. Okay. And so the way we can extract information from the model is using categories, selecting the category, and we can extract all the elements of a specific category using this second node. So it's providing the list of elements, and according to where we connect these element parameters, if we connect directly to the element, we get the instances parameters. And if we connect these element parameters to the element type of a specific element, that we can get the type parameters. So let's see, we want to extract a specific parameter from the element. And we want to create like a report of elements that we want to export out to Excel. So the first thing we need is this element get parameter value by name. And what we need, of course, is to connect the element if we want to extract an instance parameter, and we need to connect the element type if we want to extract the type parameter. So this node is just actually giving to you the list of parameters, is not extracting any kind of parameter from the element. And most of the times, I'm just using this to find the right name that I want to extract and use as a parameter name. So how we can extract the element ID? The element ID is pretty simple because there is already a specific node to do that. But if we want to extract, for example, the level information, we can go and find how it's called, the name, the parameter for ducts, because sometimes it's called level, sometimes it's called the reference level for a specific category, sometimes it is the base of the offset for a wall. So it depends on what is the name of this element. You have to find the right information. So let's check. You can do both. You can check from here, or you can just select one element from the project, and then you can see that the name of the element of the parameter is reference level. So we can connect, and this is an instance parameter. So we can connect the element up to here. Let's move this element ID here. And then we can insert the name of the parameter. And as you can see, the input is a string. So we need to find the way to write a string. And we can use a string node where we can write reference level exactly with the same, in the same way that you can find in the interface. So you have to write in the correct way with the right capital letters and the right blank spaces, because it's case sensitive. And the other way, you know this, is to use a code block and write reference level in this way. So it's exactly the same thing. I prefer always to use this way because I can write multiple parameters in the same code block. So it's pretty, it's more easy to maintain this one. So let's push run. And here we have a list of levels, exactly what we need. The level, it's a specific kind of information, bringing together not only the name of the level, but also the elevation of the level, and of course the ID of the level. So if we want to extract the level name, we need to use another node here, which is exactly level name. And after this one, we have a string with the level name, exactly what we need. So level 1, 2, 3, and it depends on the element. You can use two kind of nodes if you want to extract a name of an element, because you can use also element name. They have just the same exactly exact result. So you can connect both of them in the same way. So this is more generic, and you can connect this one also to the elements to get the name of the element, or you can connect this directly to a level name to get the level name as well. So it's pretty simple to remember, more probably better this one than this one. So I'm going to use the element name for this. So this is actually our first information, and this is the level. So as we said, now we need to understand the size of the element. And to understand the size of the element, we can use the size information, or we can use two different informations like the width and the height. So I'm going to use just the size information, which is a string information coming from the instances parameter, which provides both the width and the height together. So we don't need actually to make any calculation on these parameters, so we can just use a string that we can use later to filter elements. So how we can do that? We need again another node like this, where we need to connect again the elements. So that's why I'm using the Control-C, Control-V, the copy-paste, because now we have already the elements connected to here. But if you don't want to use this, you can again use like get parameter value by name, and remember to connect the elements. And then we need to write the name of the parameter. So you can both write in this way and then write size here, or you can just write size after in a new line here, and you can just connect now the size here. This is much more easy to understand later, because you can create a group here saying that those are the parameters name. And this can be again an input information that you can bring here. So you know that whatever is a list of inputs is located in this area of the node. So remember, you have always to try to keep everything in a very easy way to listen and to understand. So this one is a list of sizes, and again for each element this is the exact size. So this is the size. In the exact same way, I'm going to Control-C, Control-V the entire group, just to keep also this one, and this will be the length. And I'm going to add here the length, and I can connect the new parameter to here. And this is the list of length. Now I just want to show to you where we can understand that a parameter is not in the metric system, but is in the for example, in the imperial systems. So the length is still in the metric systems. But if we try, for example, Control C, Control V, as you know, the duct is not purchased by length or by size, but is purchased by square meters. So let's see, we want as again to select this element. This one was the, remember, the first one we saw at the beginning. So we know that the length of this element is 2.68 meters. And we can go here and let's see, I want just to check the first one. Let me find the 392168. So let me select the 3 just to have something that we can understand. 392168. 392168. Okay. So the length of this one is exactly 3.4420. And we can see from here that the length is 34419, and this is correct. 19, it's as you can see, the number is a full double number, so this is just a rounding value of that one. The size is 300 by 300, and we can see that the first one is exactly 300 by 300, and which is correct. And if we run this one and we add the area as a parameter here, and we connect the area to this one, we can see that the area is 4.1303. And if we go here, we can see that the area is, oh, it's coming. That's strange. That's pretty strange, because the area is one of that parameter that is not coming in the right way. And that's a pretty strange. By the way, if you want to convert informations, you have a node that can convert information between 2 different kind of systems. For example, from square meters into square foot. So if you need to change your systems, you can extract your information into square foots, for example. Or if you have square foots and you want to connect into square meters, you can always change this into a specific unit. So always remember to double check if the element, especially if you are using something that is a measurement in Revit. So you have always to keep in mind that it is better to check if the value, you have to check just the first one. It's not a big deal. If the value is exactly in the same units measurement that you are using in your project, or if you want to change it. So let me check. In which order does Dynamo list the elements of a list? Well, it's quite strange actually. There's no a real way to list elements, because the first time it's by ID, but as you can see, the ID it's not incremented by 1, because sometimes it's you draw a piece of ducts and then you receive an ID, and then, for example, you delete a piece of duct, or you connect 2 pieces of ducts and then you get another ID. So these ID are always changing sometime during the project. In this specific list, yes, it's by ID, but the ID is not coming always in the same order. So it depends on how the project is modeled. But this list is actually by the ID. value. But you don't need actually to know how this one is listed, because it doesn't matter. The list is always made in the same way, and if you don't touch anything in the project, this is always in the same order. I will give you a small tips when we reach the Excel export and import phase. So let's say we have now the level, we have the size, we have the length, and we have the area, and that's probably what we need. Last but not least, we have the ID of the element as an integer, but we need this one as a string. So what we can do, we can convert an integer number into a string. And we have a node called string from object that is doing exactly this operation. So the number is the same, but we just have element ID. So as I said, the element ID, it's kind of information that I would like to have back into the project, because I can use this information later, for example, to make some specific script to bring back clashes from Navisworks, and then highlight things in Revit. So it's the element ID. It's really important. We can use the element ID to generate a serial number for the element, to keep track of the element on site. So the element ID, it can be pretty important. And as you can see, if I'm going to create, for example, let's open a project browser. We have the project browser here, and we create a new schedule of ducts. And yeah, let's say this is duct schedule. And for example, we want exactly the same, the reference level. Oh, reference level is one of the things that we don't have actually for ducts. Did you know that? So Dynamo is one of the ways to connect informations that you don't have in your interface. We are asking for the reference level informations in the schedules since probably 10 years, but still we don't have this information in the schedule. So Dynamo is one of the ways that you can use to link informations that you have in the model, but you can't access through the schedules. So we can create two brand new project parameters or share parameters. It's up to you, of course. And we can say that this is called element ID, is an instance parameter, and we can, for example, give this information to all the elements. It's a text parameter actually, and we can list this under data, and we can say that the default value is empty, and we can say that we have element level, which is again an instance value, again is a text value under the data, and we can apply these to all the elements, and again we can say okay, and the value is empty. So if I click now on my elements, I know that I have two new parameters, and those two new parameters are just listed here under data, but all of them, of course, are empty. So how I can write these informations back to the element. To do that, I just have the other node called set value, set parameter by name, where I can say the element where I want to write the information, and the element is exactly the same element from where we are reading the information. the parameter name is a new bunch of parameters name, and this element ID is exactly the parameter that we just created in the project, and we can say that this group are the set parameters, and this one are the get parameters. So I can connect this element ID up to the parameter name, and the value is coming from this node. So what is the flow of this workflow? I'm selecting all the elements. I'm connecting the elements to get the element ID of each one of the elements. I'm converting this integer value into a string value, and then I'm using the same value to write this into a new parameter, which is a project parameter. And to do that, I need a list of elements, and to be sure that I'm using the same element to extract and to write back the information, I have to connect, of course, this information to the same element. Cannot be a type parameter because it's changing every time. It should be always an instance parameter in this case. Same for the level, same for the size, same for the length, and same for the area. So the other, and this one can be a new value saying that elements ID. So if I click run now, after a couple of seconds, I will have all the ID back into each element inside the element ID information. And every time this will change, so if I'm going to delete this element, for example, and I'm going to create a new one instead of this, the ID of the element will change also, and we need to run again this script to be able to write the new value in the new element. So remember, this is not something that is happening at runtime unless you don't use this automatic, which I'm not suggesting to use, especially if you deal with a huge amount of informations. So anytime you have changes in the project, you need to run again this get and set information to update the list of ID in the element. So the same exact thing we can do for the level. So Control C, Control V, this one, let me disconnect so we can do it in a proper way. We can call this like element level. We need to find which elements we want, and they are always the same. We need to find the parameter name, and we can write the parameter name here because it's a set parameter and the name is element level. So we can connect this to the parameter name, and the value, of course, is the one coming from this extraction. So again, I have this. I have now the element ID, but the element level is empty. I can run this script again. And the value of level 2 now it's available again here. So if I'm going to change now this value to level 1, of course, this will not change because it's just a text element. But if I'm going to run again this, so periodically I have to do this update, then I have the new one, which is overwriting the previous one. So just run, run, and run. So before doing any kind of extraction from the model, then you can just export and you can run this script to update all the information. After this, you have the rights to use in your duct schedule. Let's see here. You have the way to use element ID, element level, and then we said we want the size. For example, we have the size, we have the length, and we have the area. And finally, if you want to filter elements by element level, you can do that as well. So you can group elements by level, and you can filter elements by level, or finally, you can group elements by level, and then, for example, by size, and you can do the total amount. And in a very easy way, you can calculate totals here and totals here and say, I want to see in this way. So of course the element ID now it's not working because you group elements, but you can also say, let's see the count here, for example, and you have the count of elements, which is not really important actually, because what you need is exactly the area and probably only the total amount of area based on the level. So as you can see, using Dynamo, you can add more informations to schedules that you couldn't add before. And you can use now those informations to create more comprehensive schedules that you weren't able to create before. But still we have the problem that we are not able to export the reports unless we use, for example, a plugin. We don't have any way to export the schedule outside Revit into an Excel format in a straight way. Because if we want to use Revit tools, we need to export a text file, and then we can bring this file into Excel and then make some modification and so on. So what if we want to do it straight away in a proper way? So we can use the tools in Dynamo to export these informations directly to Excel. So the node is called Excel write to file. And let's see what are the list of parameters that we need. So first we need a file path. So the file path is the name of the Excel file. To do that, we need to use a file path node. So we can click on browse and we can say that this is duct export.xlx. Remember that you have to include the extension of the file. It's not coming automatically. So you have to write the entire file name with the name of the file and the extension of the file. So then we can say open, and we can connect this to the file path. Then we need to give a name of the sheet name that we want to use as a sheet name. And we can use a string for this and say that this is the duct export. It doesn't matter. This is a name that you can use and it's just a string. Then we need to tell to Excel from which cell we want to start to write. So the first upper left cell, let me open Excel just to show you in a proper way. Okay. So the first cell on the top left is 0, 0. So the coordinates, let's say, of this cell are 0, 0. The second one is 0, 1. The third one is 0, 2, and so on. So remember that the first, the numbering in all these kind of systems, like when you use lists, is starting from 0. So the first element is not the element number 1, but is the element number 0. So the first cell is row 0, column 0. And if you go on the rows, you have 0 and the progressive number up to x. And if you go down to the column, you have 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So this cell, for example, the B3 is row number 2 and column number 1. So remember always that you have to start from 0. So going back to Dynamo, the first row is number 0, for example. So we will start to write from the very top left. And the start column is exactly the same. So 0, 0. And because it's the same, we can just connect the same number to two different inputs. Then the most important are the data that you want to export to Excel. And the last one is the overwrite choice. So you can say every time I export information from Dynamo to Excel, I want to overwrite all the information that I already have in my sheet. Or if you choose false, you can say, okay, I don't want to overwrite all the information. I just want to change the information that are going to be written in the cells. So I'm always using the true because I don't want to keep any previous data in my sheet. Okay, so if you want to keep previous data, you can just use a new sheet. So Dynamo will not overwrite that sheet, but will create a new sheet inside the same file. So let's say that I want to overwrite. So I'm using a Boolean note connected to this overwrite, and I want to choose true. In the same exact way, you can write true in a code block. This is exactly the same, but for now we can use just the Boolean one. So how we can collect now the data? We need to create a list, and you know how to create a list. There is a node called list.create. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 parameters. Actually, we want to add the name, for example. So we can say that we want the element name here, and we can connect to this one. And this is, let's say this is the element name. And we can also get the type name. Control C, Control V. And we can say that those are the type names. But this time, sorry, we need to connect to the type element. So let me remove now this element parameters because I don't want to confuse you. So I'm just removing this. Okay, so let me click run. I'm still not exporting anything, but you can see that this is the element name and this is the type name. In this time, of course, just for the duct, those names are exactly the same. But sometimes if you have doors, you can have an element name and then you can have a type name for the doors. So probably we don't need this one. So how we can create now the list? We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 elements. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So from 0 to 4. And then we need to connect those information. We don't need to connect this, but we need to connect the real information because this node is just to write back to Revit the information. So the element ID, the element name, the level, and then the size, and then the length, and probably we need one more. And then the area. So if I click run now, I have all this. The first list is the list of ID, the second one is the name, the third one is the level, the fourth one is the length, and so on. But Revit is these lists now. Let's try to connect this list to the data and let's see what is the result. So if everything is okay now, when I click run, we have Excel opening and Dynamo writing the information to Excel. So let's click run. Depending on the number of information, this can take a little bit more of time, of course. But you can see on the bottom that Excel is opened and we have all the information in my Excel sheet. So we have our sheet called duct export. The sheet one is the, let's say, the default sheet that all the new Excel file has. But we have one problem. So the lists are written by rows and not by columns. That is what we need actually. So there is a functionality in Dynamo to transpose lists. So to make lists of rows into lists of columns. So before going to the data, we need one more node, which is list.transpose. So those lists are rows now. So we need to transpose this list now before, because now those are the rows. So we have one row for each element. And if we go back and we connect this to the data, we can close this one and we can see that right now, if we open Dynamo and we run again, we have the correct one. So we have the ID, we have the name, we have the level, we have the size, we have the number, and we have the area. So if we want to keep one row empty, just for our purposes, we can say that, for example, we want to start from the row number 1 and from the column number 0. And again, we can hit run. and is updated. So it's pretty simple. If we need to export something more, let's say we want the duct fittings, we can use the same exact workflow starting from this element. We can say Control C, Control V, and we can say duct fittings. So I will just export the name and the ID because you already know how to do the other things. So element ID, and for example, this is a string from objects, and we can connect this, and this is the ID, and just we can get parameter value by name, and we can say that the let me go here. I just want to check how the fittings are called. So we have duct fittings. We probably have some filter here. Let's say okay. So the fittings level is called level this time. So you have always to double check. And so we can say that this is level. We can connect this to this, and then we have element name, level element name. So again, we can click run. We don't need to close Excel here. So now it's extracting all the information regarding the fittings. And now we have all the levels for the fittings, and we have the level name for the fittings, and we have the element ID for the fittings. So this is again Control G, and this is the level. So how we need to, how we can export? We need again an Excel sheet. We can keep the same Excel file if we want the same Excel file with different sheets, or we can just create a new Excel file. For this time, I'm going to use the same Excel file. Just I will change the name of the sheet, and I will call this one like duct fittings export. So I'm going to keep all the same informations, just I'm going to change this one, and of course I need to change the list of elements. List create, and this time I want just the element ID, the level name, and transpose this list straight into the data information. So click run. Go to Excel. Now we have again duct export, which is the first one, duct fittings. And so you can start to build your own Excel file. So it's pretty powerful, this element. So once you have this, you can start to use Excel. So you can start, for example, to create pivot table. So let's insert, for example, a pivot table. We can say to insert the pivot table into the existing worksheet. Let's say, okay, here, and select the table range up to here. Say okay, okay. And let's see, I'm creating this in this way, and say okay. So here we have our duct elements. So we can say filter by levels, and then we can say put together the length by level, and yeah, this is a sum. So we have immediately the information level by level about the length of each duct, and we can then go and say, okay, make it by size, but this is really, this is then is Excel, but you can understand, you can easily imagine how you can use those informations to have a pretty quick schedule. If you have your own template in Excel, you can just export all the informations directly into this, and then you can build your own dashboards pretty fast and forward. So easy, something that you can't do exactly in Revit, but sometimes you need these informations probably to purchase and to plan the purchase requirements, or just to make rooms schedules and to have information about the square meters by department and so on. So what we will see next time is actually, let me save this one. It's actually how to modify informations and then how to import back into Revit those information, because sometimes it's pretty easy to fill information into Revit, sorry, into Excel, and probably change informations into Excel, and then we need to push back this information back to Revit. So this time is an export, and then we will use these Excel sheet to compile new informations here and then push back this information into Revit. So let's see, we have, if I want set parameters ID for multiple categories, do I have to copy category and all elements of category for each one, or I can select in one node multiple categories? Well, the question is really good. You can do that. You can use only one single node to list multiple categories. I will show you the next time how to do that, which is actually the next step, because otherwise you have to write probably dozens of nodes, but you can concentrate just into one node. To do that, just as an information, you can write a list of categories by the name, for example, walls, and for example, ducts. Oops. Ducts, and so on. You can create a list in this way, or using the syntax in this way. You have wall and ducts, and you have category by name, which is this one. And then you have all elements of categories. And if you click run, you have two lists. The first one is the list of walls, and the second one is the list of ducts. And starting from this, you can select walls and ducts separately, and then you can filter whatever you want. I can add all the things that I want. Cable trays, I hope this lesson was okay, and see you next time.